questioned by the very people who voted them in. We think that their fears of these people are very, very justified, right? We think that the problem with status quo is that stupid politicians get voted in and they do stupid things while and the only reason they get voted in is they're popular because people like this particular politician. And we think that the people in this particular sense are not a very good judge of politicians' ability to lead a country. That is why we inside government think that politicians need to pass. We will let them. What is our mechanism? First, testing. We think that this IQ test is to measure the ability of these politicians to think, to make good judgment. It is not just an academic test, even though we do consider academic knowledge is necessary in making good policies, but we think that it's more on the application of this knowledge, and we think that IQ test will be able to show whether this politician is able to apply that knowledge while in office or not, right? This IQ test is going to be set up by a body. We will run it under the judicial branch, so there's a check and balance between the different branches of government, right? Legislative, judicial, executive, and so that it will be independent in this sense. And because I don't like to keep saying independent body, I'm going to call this body SAM. Okay, so SAM will basically set this test and run the test and make sure to ensure the integrity of this test. Okay, 3 arguments for me today. Number 1, why is the necessity of having a good politician in office? Secondly, how this test encourages good politicians to run for office. And lastly, how you create a better democratic process. But before I explain that, sure.
Clarify, are you going to publish these things to the whole public for them to know?
Yeah. We think that the results of the test, in fact, even the context of the test, we are perfectly happy to publish it to the public in order for them to, in the interest of transparency, in order for them to know what the politicians are sitting for, to know that these politicians are being tested right properly. Let me tell you why it's so necessary for having good politicians in office. We think that the people responsible for leading the country are these politicians. They make decisions, they implement, they are discuss and debate policies, and they implement policies on behalf of the people in order to grow the country, to develop the country, to better the people. We think, right, that in order to have growth of the economy, in order to have development of the country, you need to have good people in office. People who have long-sighted views, who are able to know what the country needs to develop and able to develop this country, even though sometimes it might make them unpopular, right? What is the impact of the harm? Without this test, right, we're not going to say that all politicians in office are stupid, but we think that without this fail-safe system, there'll be a lot of not as good politicians in office because they get voted in because of popularity. And the decisions they make, right, isn't so much based on what's best for the country, but based on other incentives, right, based on political lobbying, based on what do you call it? Incentive that might affect that decision. We don't think this is very good. But how is it beneficial? When you do who does run for office has a certain he knows that he's not going to be a capable leader, he just wants to run for the power, right? Then he will be discouraged from joining. We think that this is going to be to better politicians to run for office. And this is also going to increase the number of people who try to participate in this process, to encourage them to encourage the capable people to run for office in order that this country might be led by capable people. Third argument, how you create a better democratic process. Because now when the people themselves know that the people who are running for office are of a certain caliber, right? More people are willing to participate in these elections. We think that the source of voter apathy is because they think that all politicians are bad, right? Because most voters think that the governments do things that are, in their point of view, pretty stupid. Even though this is just a perception, we concede that there are good politicians in office under status quo. This is just perception, but it still impacts them all the same. They tell their friends, right, so-and-so politicians is really, really stupid. I don't think I'm going to vote today. Under our policy, voter confidence is increased, and now these people are more willing to come out and vote for the country. How is this beneficial? Now the government will be more representative of the wills of the people, more reflective of the will, because the higher voter turnout means higher voter participation, right? And the policies implemented by this government will be more accepted by the people, because the people are the ones that put these politicians in office in the first place. We think that because of that, people are also more willing to work with the government in areas such as law enforcement, areas such as educational policies, where people are more willing to coordinate with the police in order to preserve social order, where teachers are more willing to implement education policies to teach the student instead of doing like the bare minimum. We think that the drive to have a country prosper, because you know that you have good leaders in the driver's seat, is what incentivizes people to help push their country forward as well. Because we think that we need good politicians in office, because we think that our policy encourages good politicians to run for office, and also because our policy makes a better democratic process and improves the patriotism of the people, we're extremely proud to propose. Thank you.
Not all politicians are good and not all politicians are bad. That's what they want to talk about. But they never really clarify to us what makes a bad politician bad in the first place. We think that this is important questions. They need to measure on what kind of politicians is bad and what makes a politician good in a democratic society. But even then, let's tackle on these three arguments that they talked about. They talk about why is it necessarily, secondly, how it encourages its people, and thirdly, what makes a better democratic system. Now, under these three points and arguments in the bin, the whole assumptions is based contingent upon that majority are basically stupid. Because whatever they talked about, they're saying that, oh, the reason why there are bad politicians and people are voted bad politicians because the majority doesn't know. Number one, in order for you to let that argument fly, you need to prove to us that the majority does make bad decisions to begin with, which they didn't. Secondly, we think that whatever the majority vote in the first place is based on informed consent. So whatever the majority vote and gets the politicians in the public office, gentlemen, it's up to their vote, and because they decide what politicians that they want them to run. And we think this is a good thing, because it's the idea of representation of the concept of democracy is upheld, and we think the idea of transparency is still there, and the old basics, fundamental the idea of democracy as it exists. We don't think that this is a problem, because it's the majority thinks that they're the best, and then they should go for that. But even then, they also talked about that you need good people in your policy. Therefore, you need these certain measures of IQ tests. Who gives you an idea that IQ measures leadership in the begin with? This is very important, because they consider the fact that IQ measures your intelligence. But does intelligence quantifies your leadership skills and engagement? Leadership skills is always based on the social kind of things. How you interact with people, how you manipulate, how you encourage people, how you talk to people, ladies and gentlemen, how you do certain types of skills in your life. Your intelligence doesn't quantify that. This is a simple example, right? People could be really smart in class, but doesn't social and doesn't lead the other people, right, ladies and gentlemen? And this is something that you need to take into consideration. Before that, defend yourself.
Majority of people don't like higher taxes and austerity policies, even though your country is deeply in debt. How does your side deal with those kind of situations?
We don't think it's our burden to prove how to decrease that. But secondly, if the people really doesn't like the government or what you said, then they probably won't vote it to begin with. So we don't think that's a major problem on your side, right? But let us go on. How they talked about it increases the voters' confidence, for example. Like, this is a very misleading links because they haven't proven to us how the voters doesn't even want to vote in the first place. We think when the majority wants to vote, we think it's fine either way. But before that, let's go to my two contentions, and some rebuttals will be integrated to begin with. I have two contentions for you. Number one, how the concept of IQ test is not really ideal for politicians. And secondly, I'm going to talk about how it discredits individuals' perception, or how one of the individuals' perception reacts. First one, the concept of IQ test. Let's go back from a retrospective view and what the IQ test was for. Number one, we think in the past it's basically for measure whether a psychopath is sane or not. To measures or intelligence. For example, like in Malaysia, in year 6, they decide whether or not you are an intelligent student or you are a normal student. But hey, hold on, does this measure your leadership skills and your social skills as a politician? Does it measure how good your ideology is per se? We don't think so. Now, why is this important that IQ test shouldn't be a barometer or a parameter for you to measure? We think that when you how you decide a politician is number one, because in the criteria to be a politician, it's we think that in status quo is this individuals go study for politics or international relationship, which this creates credentials. But we are willing to concede that there are some individuals who don't graduate. But how does this individuals still be credentialed? The very fact that people vote for their ideologies, it shows that their ideology is based on reasoning. When people think that, hey, even though this politician doesn't really graduate in good universities or ladies and gentlemen, but their ideology does make sense, and it's on based rational reasoning, which shows that people want to vote for them because they believe that what's right for these politicians. We think that just because your intelligence doesn't make your ideology as strong as other politicians per se. So why is this important to recognize? But before that, last one.
So do you think that good leaders need to think?
Good leaders does need to think, but you don't need an IQ test to prove that you can think as much, ladies and gentlemen. Because you assume that every single individual who have lower IQ cannot think to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, we think that's not fundamentally true. You need to prove to us how people with that high IQ can supersede other people's leadership skills with low IQ, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think that's feasible. Sit down. So why is it important? Because we told you that it discredits individuals, politicians per se, especially when you infringe the rights to privacy, ladies and gentlemen. And secondly, we think that by making the IQ test, why is it important? Because you make these individuals, when you base IQ test at your leadership skills, then you won't get the best leaders out there in your politicians and the public office. You can get people with a high intelligence, doesn't mean they can take care of a certain policy. Because the criteria for you to be a politician is very simple. It's not just about your intelligence, it's all about how the policies are making, how the policies affected ladies and gentlemen. These cannot be only upheld by a certain measurements, which is your IQ test. But secondly, how it discredits individuals' perception. We think that on a surface level, if you're a normal individual, you always judge a politician based on their ideologies and the policies that they are making. And then most importantly, how a character of that individuals. We think that this is good on our side because this creates proper reasoning, and secondly, it creates discourse for the individuals. You don't need an IQ test because you can have a discourse based on their own ideology. Now, the bad thing about this, when you change only on IQ, you blur the individuals as a normal individual's perception, especially when the government says, hey, it's only IQ test equals to intelligence equals to better decision making, you cloud their normal individual perception. Now they don't want to go on certain ideologies, their characters, or their policy making. You blur them by saying, oh, just because they're IQ, then therefore it makes it better. And we think this is more demonstrably helpful because it destroys the idea of transparency as well. And we think that it doesn't make the individuals to choose the right decision or make a better democracy system as they talk about. And we think that is harmful for the politicians. It destroys the self-actualization for the politician. Before that, thank you very much.
Mahatma Gandhi, Barack Obama, these people had a high IQ, which does promise them to go to a good university to get a good education, right? We think it's a prerequisite to politicians to have a higher IQ than the average man because they're taking the accountability of the entire nation in government, right? The opening opposition talk to you about, right? They talk to you about two things. Firstly, they talk to you about the concept on IQ test and why doesn't it apply in this situation. The entire paradigm was that they actually considered the fact that good leaders need to think. Good leaders need to think because IQ test is a measure of rationality. You need to be rational when you create decisions. Because if you have someone with a high emotional quotient, which emotional quotient can be built over time, we're not saying emotional quotient is not important. We're just saying we're prepared to prioritize IQ. Because without IQ in the first place, how would you be able to make rational decisions for the people if you do not have if you keep prioritizing EQ, because if everyone has emotional quotient and nobody in the end of the day will have intelligence quotient, nobody will be able to ask the questions to make decisions that need rationality, right? So we tell you that this is not something that is actually very feasible, because we tell you that IQ is more important because you need the ability to think. If you don't have that ability to think, how are you going to carry out decisions for that the people voted for you to actually resolve, right? We tell you that this is false under their paradigm. Then they talk to you about how this discredits politician, right? We tell you that this is a trade-off on the rights of privacy, because once you become a politician, you're actually trading off your rights of privacy, because there will be tabloid media, there will be paparazzis coming and attacking you over all the scandals that you actually went about, right? And we tell you that even though they are infringing the right of privacy, we tell you that this is in line with the harm principle, because their rights are actually reprimanded in this case because for the rights of the people, because if they themselves are on this, then they can't actually make decisions for people, right? And he came up and he talks about the whole voter. He talked about individuals on one level. He told why he came up and told us why voters vote. He didn't actually tell us the entire impact of what happens when they vote for higher IQ individuals, right? I'm going to talk to you two things today. Firstly, on the benefits, better benefits of society as a whole, and secondly, on international recognition. But before I move on, are there any POIs? Thank you. Yes.
Can you be the first one on your side to explain why are these people popular in the first place?
Thank you. We tell you that the people are popular in the first place. Thank you, which leads me to a line of rebuttal. The only reason why these politicians are being voted in today's world is because the intelligent people are being discriminated. They're not being given the credit that they actually need. Because everyone is actually voting for them based on popularity, without significance of thought, without actually carrying out rational thinking. Because society themselves is detrimental together. And by having a political leader, by having an example of a person with high intelligence quotient, I'll explain to you in my second argument how we'll actually be raising standards of society, right? But two levels on how it brings better benefits to society. Firstly, on the accountability. We tell you when a politician becomes a politician towards the nation, right, that he has a sense of responsibility towards the country and towards the people, right? So when you have a higher IQ, by theory, we suggest that you have a higher way of rational thinking compared to the average man, right? And this automatically gives you the credibility to be to lead the people that have voted for you, right? And we tell you that this has improved the whole way of running a country. And we also tell you that you wouldn't want someone who's actually can't think rationally to lead your country. Because what happens when you have someone who can't think rationally? For example, you give them a bribe, they will automatically take this bribe and say, oh look, it's money towards my towards my own benefit. You're not actually taking, they're not actually rationally thinking, but by taking this bribe, what are the implications towards society later on, right? And when you have this, it's really detrimental towards the whole political system, like what TJ pointed out to you earlier, how the entire democracy process is not actually substantiated, right? But when you have someone that has a certain IQ, a lower IQ, right, we tell you that this is actually an incapable process of the entire democratic system, right? Because we tell you democracy looks beyond popularity, beyond all of this. It comes back to the entire idea of manifestos during your political regime. And we tell you that because of the ideas that you present at these manifestos, and because of your intelligence in creating these ideas, is the reason why people vote for you, right? Secondly, on the idea of representation, we tell you that people are being denied credibility because they have low emotional quotient, that they lack this whole interaction with society. And we tell you by actually prioritizing this as a requirement, people will actually become more aware. Hey, look, why are they doing this? Because they're trying to tell you people with a high intelligent quotient have a more rational way of thinking. Society themselves change the perception of a politician, someone who is not popular anymore, but someone who is more credible in the line of thinking, who eventually becomes popular later on, right? So we tell you that in this line that someone will have a just, because it's in that certain area, people are voting for me because I came from that area. So it distorts the whole idea of representation, right? Because we tell you that you
you won't accept bribery. Why so? Because it isn't necessarily so. Just having a high IQ, having an intellectual, having a high intellect doesn't necessarily mean that you won't take the intellectual decision to benefit your family and yourselves first. If they don't prove that people who have a high IQ make good decisions. Furthermore, these strange arguments about representation that are incredible simply because a piece of paper tells them to do so. We think it's a more legitimate and a more beneficial way of democracy that people base their actions on their ideologies, on what they preach on, and what they've proven to do so, and not what a piece of paper is telling them to do, Madam Chair. Arguments about how we would eliminate monarchies through their policies actually kind of strange, since history tells us that you don't necessarily need these things for people to realize that those things are bad. But furthermore, what if these monarchs, like flip the logic on his side, what if these monarchs have high IQ tests? Wouldn't that mean that they would sit down, that they would entrench monarchies under their side? Kind of weird. Okay, going on to argument. Before that, yeah, sure.
We said that those people who pass this test can then run for election, right? It's not people who pass the test straight away go to office.
Yeah.
Checks and balances also exist under outside form of election.
Then why do you, if you consider that there are checks and balances, then why do you need this policy?
Yeah.
As you consented, your second speaker said this, that this policy was being done in order to gain credibility, in order for people to already buy without question, or more probability, without question, believing the politicians because of a piece of paper. We do not like that, Madam Chair. Okay, argument. How we entrench structures of power. What this side of the House is doing is that they're creating an incentive for political parties to elect particular people, i.e. having IQs into their party, Madam Chair. People such as who have gone through high education, people who have gone through particular private schools, i.e. the rich, the privileged who have better education are the ones that are going to have an incentive towards getting these people. Why is this so bad? It means that you're crowding out all the poor people who didn't have the chance to gain an education and develop their IQ. Why is this extremely bad? Because we think that particular views such as the poor one, because political advocates of the poor have a tendency to come off from poor backgrounds because they understand more about their situations. They know about the pain of their people. What this side of the House is doing is essentially that they're making these political parties no longer take into account the considerations of the people who come from poor backgrounds, because simply they don't have a piece of paper that tells them that their IQ is good enough. They disenfranchise a whole group of people, because they didn't go to a particular good education, Madam Chair. We don't think that this is a beneficial thing, because democracy is about getting the most form of people into your system. This side doesn't do this. But also, second, in terms of structural power, is that we disincentivize participation. Sit down. I'm rebutting. They said, and they conceded, that they will be disincentivizing participation. Madam Chair, we don't think that this is a good thing because of what Eddie talked about. We don't think that the only consideration that you should base on is about things such as IQ. We think that people who have even slightly lower IQ may have creative ideas, Madam Chair. Okay, but also on the issue of privacy, we do not believe that politicians, once they come into public office, that automatically means that they agree to not having a private life, Madam Chair. We think that actually this IQ test is incredibly personal and incredibly harmful if they give it to the public. Why is it so? Because basically what the public thinks of the IQ test about whether you make good decisions, Madam Chair, it affects your self-esteem, because when you have a low IQ and you tell everyone
with Facebook. They got nothing to do with politics here. So talking about popularity. So if a singer goes for a vote and you vote for him, so okay, my personal view on this topic is why this topic is being brought up today is because the rate of corruption is increasing, the violence in politics are lying, so that is why the topics are brought up today. Okay, moving on to my points, which is everything has to start from the root. Alright? So let's say for a farmer, for example, farmer, he want to plant a tree, so he plant a seed and he starts something from the root. So same goes to this. Why are you denying the fact? All politicians should undergo an IQ test prior to running for public office. I'm not saying it's going to perfect the system, but it is going to improve the system, which opposition are blinded again. Okay, let's say two engineering students, they are good, everything, they can speak well, everything, and they go for an interview. So how do you differentiate them? How? By IQ test. Not everyone is going to have the same IQ. This is one of the methods to elevate moving on to my second point is, with this IQ test, it can recognize the person's early impression, which not everybody has it. You can go into a walk-in interview and you can sit down and just lie, and you get chosen. That is not it. That is why we need IQ tests to run for public office.
The reason why politicians are popular is because the majority accepts their ideologies. In order for you to prove this wrong, you need to prove that the majority cannot make a rational decision to choose who are the best for them to run their country.
Sir, I just explained about bullshit convincing, sir. All that, they just keep on telling lies and lies and lies, and you are being blinded and you vote for them.
What assurance do we have that people who have a high IQ will definitely not lie? Yeah.
Like what I said, it will not perfect the system, but definitely improves it.
What's it?
With that, the government think proud to propose.
That's it.
Coming from side closing opposition, we think the attitude, behavior, character, and most importantly, integrity are what politicians need in status quo. These things outweigh paper qualifications. Because you don't need a test to be an effective politician. All you need is knowledge, and that's something no one in this debate has talked about before. That's what makes closing opposition so unique. First of all, before I begin my case, I'm going to talk to you about few rebuttals. Mostly from side opening government, because side closing didn't really give us much to rebut with. Firstly, on the idea of how people are apparently not good enough judges and the state is justified interfering. We tell you this is shameful. Why? Because now what the government is trying to do is they're trying to limit the pool of politicians in the first place. Because by imposing this filter before people are eligible to stand for office, you reduce the amount of people, capable people, and I'll talk to you more about that, about how this weeds out proper candidates. This limits the pool of politicians who are eligible to stand for office in the first place. First rebuttal. Secondly, you are then, by extension, you are then limiting the choice of the people, because people cannot people who look up to a particular leader in their community are not able to elect this person into office. Why so? Because this person may not necessarily pass an IQ test, but the people can relate to his leadership, social, or knowledge, right? Because like I said, just because you don't do well in an IQ test, that doesn't necessarily make you a poor politician or a poor leader to begin with. I'll talk to you more in my extension about how knowledge is the real issue in this debate and not intelligence, because knowledge is what is essential and knowledge is necessary into this in this situation. No, here. We're trying to talk about intelligence, not knowledge. Third level of rebuttal, right? Even if you say that people are not good judges, we think the state still has no right to interfere in the political system to begin with. Because the problem is, state interference removes fairness and equity from the political system. And this also further hampers the faith that the public has in the system to begin with. And this is connected to the low participation rates that they spoke about, because people have no faith in the system, because the state is interfering too much. So what we think is, there's a natural check and balance, right, Madam Chair? The natural check and balance is, if the people think that education and intelligence is their priority, then vote the candidate out. Let him stand for office. Why are you stopping people to stand for office? Because we know status quo, if you don't get a certain amount of votes, you lose a deficit, and that in itself is incentive for politicians to know, if I'm not good enough, if I'm not likely to meet the characteristics and the needs of the people, I won't stand for office because I actually have something to lose. Okay, second rebuttal, right? On the concept of rationality, right? Because they came up and said, they tried to make it look like rationality is granted, right? We think that rationality is a transient policy, a transient concept, which means that rationality doesn't necessarily exist throughout the whole period of time. Just because you're rational during the IQ test, it doesn't mean you'll be rational throughout the entire period of your tenure as a politician, right? So in that sense, my first level of rebuttal is rationality is not guaranteed. But secondly, why do people behave irrationally to begin with, right? Because people behave irrationally based on many reasons. Bribery and all this doesn't mean that you're not thinking rationally. Bribery means that it means you're materialistic, it means you're selfish. This doesn't fall under the idea of rationality, right? Because, so moving on, right? So even then, even if they say like taking bribes just demonstrates how irrational you are, we tell you rational people take bribes too. Politicians have scandals and all that, they're rational thinking people. Just because you're rational when you take IQ test doesn't mean you're rational forever, right? Because for example, like irrationality can be momentary, right? The characteristics of irrationality to begin with can happen anytime, anywhere, and the most smart people sometimes do behave irrationally as well. So, okay, no, sit down. But then they talked about how it raises political freedom, right? Then they talked about corruption and stuff like that. So my rebuttals to this are this, right? If you're so concerned about Japan and its nepotistic policies and how a prime minister's son is more likely to take over office, we think the IQ tests are not the way to go on this, because anyone, just because you're smart, it doesn't solve the problem of nepotism to begin with, right? Because just even then, like even as long all you need is a generation that's well trained and well drilled to deal with IQ tests, and the nepotistic policies can still continue. Because all you need then is that, oh, my father is the Japanese PM, therefore I'm next in line. All I need to do is, this just imposes a basic filter. All you need to do is pass the basic filter, and nepotism still continues. This solves nothing under their policy. Okay, you'll hear more rebuttals from Keith, right? Because he's government whip. But more importantly, let's move on to first extension. Have a seat later. Right. Firstly, on how I'll extend on the opening opposition's idea on how IQ tests, why are they taken, right? We tell you, IQ tests are only taken when intellectual capacity needs to be tested. In this case, we don't think intellectual capacity needs to be tested because it is redundant when you don't make it compulsory. When in status quo, we don't make it compulsory for every politician to acquire knowledge, which is what's really necessary. Simple example, you're Minister of Development for Defense. If you know nothing about defense, even if you pass an IQ test, that doesn't make you a good defense minister. It's just as simple as that, right? So secondly, right, even then, like, we don't see how intelligence is necessarily a relevant point in this debate. Why? Because it's not practical, right? A smart politician is not necessarily a good one, because what are the characteristics that need to be defined in order for one to be a good politician? One, a good, like I told you, integrity, attitude, character. These things are not measured by tests, Madam Chair. These things are measured. These things, the only way you can evaluate how credible a politician is, how good he is in a certain post, is you need to wait for him. You need to evaluate his performance as a whole, and that's why elections keep happening, because we need to. This is also not only a form of democracy for people, it also serves as a point of evaluation as to how the politicians have performed. If they never perform well, they either A, wouldn't be selected again by the political party, or B, the people simply won't vote them in again because they haven't done a good job. Yes.
Is it more probable that a candidate with a degree in economics and IR knowledge will make a better economic minister, finance minister than one who has none?
Yes, but you're talking about an IQ test here. You're not talking about a degree, a level of tertiary education. Because, you see, the problem under their logic, right, is that I can choose not to go to university, but as long as I pass IQ test, I can still stand for office. That doesn't solve the problem under their paradigm. Because an IQ test is a standalone qualification. It has nothing to do with educational backgrounds, educational qualifications, which is what's really necessary. Okay, second extension on the role of politicians, right? Because I told you, a politician is someone who serves the people. That's the role they play. They serve the people. They don't necessarily have to be the most well-educated people. In the end, ultimately the comparison is this: an educated politician who is selfish, inconsiderate, takes bribes, and all he cares about is his position of power. This person is not going to be as good a politician as someone who already doesn't have the necessary qualifications, but is willing to learn, A, and B, has a genuine heart to serve the people. Because what happens when politicians step into office? They have all forms of advisors, because a decision is not unilaterally made by the politician himself. A decision is made by a few people who have knowledge on an issue, right? And this is how policies are passed. Then the proposal goes to parliament. So what we see here is, even if one individual if all you need is an attitude from one individual to be determined, to genuinely have a heart for the people, right? The rest of the knowledge, the rest of the decision making can come with the collective of the politicians in parliament, and the collective and with the advice of other people who are knowledgeable about the subject. This has nothing to do with intelligence. It has more to do with knowledge, really. But also, right, politicians are supposed to be a representation of the people, the electorate, right? So, like I told you, when participation falls, right, it's because people can relate to these politicians. It's because people, their own community leaders, Madam Chair, the people who they look up to cannot run for office. And that's the problem. That's something that's never dealt with, and that's going to further reduce the participation rate that they so prioritize. Madam Chair, for a better democracy, for a better, more representative leadership across the country, you say go with side closing opposition.
Don't raise your voice, but instead improve your argument. That is my advice to our very lost and confused opposition side. Ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed, allow me to state the motion for today's debate, which is this House believes that all politicians should undergo an IQ test prior to running for public office. So before I proceed, allow me to state the aim of today's motion. This motion is because to measure the ability of a politician to apply the knowledge out of office. So the world are having more lousy politicians than better ones. Why we are proposing today's motion? It is because it's because this IQ test is one of the methods to reduce the number of lousy politicians. Well, allow me to state that I am not saying that all politicians are stupid, but this gives a better picture to the people who are they voting for. So ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed, allow me to rebut the point stated by the opposition leader. So the opposition leader mentioned about manifestos and manifestos. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to tell you that manifestos is also a test. Why? Why manifesto is a test? Test decided by the people. The people, the voters decide whether the manifesto shows that the person has high IQ or low IQ. So if a person, let's say I go up there and say, I'll promise you that I'll give each and one of you 1 billion ringgit. So that shows that that person has low IQ. So that test is decided by people. So they also forget to say how the test is being carried out from their side of view. So how is the test? What is the parameter of the test? Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can go up there, I can bullshit convincingly, I'm an expert in that. So another leader can go up there and bullshit convincingly also. IQ test is not to show that somehow someone is better or someone is the best out there, but it's to show that another person who is bad, equally bad, is better than a person who is also bad. So IQ provokes more thinking skills, more tactical arrangement, and so on. Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, the deputy leader of opposition, he mentioned that IQ is just a piece of paper for 16 times in the whole debate. 16 times IQ is just a piece of paper. Why is just a piece of paper? They would not call it IQ test, it's just a piece of paper.
IQ test is there to judge a person's personality, to judge a person of his capability, and to show why we are applying this to politicians, to show the people who are they voting for. Yeah, according to Article 7 in Geneva Human Rights Council, 2008 in Geneva, it shows that the people deserve to know who are they voting for, what are they voting for, and how and when are they voting for. Yes.
Before an individual makes a decision, it is always a time of discourse. What you are doing here, you destroy the discourse of the individuals by saying that hey, just because especially in an actually in a democratic society.
Okay, thank you. What I got from yours was one grammar error, which was more better. Sir, first of all, it's better, not more better. So secondly, what is stated, he was talking about knowledge and knowledge and knowledge. Let me tell you, if Adele go up there and say, I'm running for presidency, and Barack Obama goes up there and say, I'm running for presidency, you know who is going to win, right? You know that Obama is going to win. Why? Because he has the knowledge, and he also has the IQ to lead a country, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on to next point, which is, they forget, like the extension of the opposition, forget that the test is set by professionals. Professionals, they are expert in their job. So they actually know what is going to happen when the person actually run a test. They know what is going to happen in 10 years. Not like him only thinks for one day, what is going to happen following day when the person votes. So they also mention about a defense minister needs knowledge than IQ. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when a situation comes in, that is where your IQ comes in instead of knowledge. You don't learn those tactical arrangements. You don't learn in books. You can't find what a person learns. You can't apply in real life. So the tactical, how to stop, that is where those IQ is needed. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm happy with, the opposition, member of opposition, he actually agreed a person with higher IQ is better. A person is higher IQ, when you have same level of person, same knowledge, when person better IQ should deserve to be a politician. Therefore, I welcome the member of opposition to be the 5th speaker of the government team. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what is the meaning of politician. At the end of the day, they forget what is the meaning of politician. So politician is decided by the people for the people. So don't the people deserve to know who are they handling with? Ladies and gentlemen, a question to the opposition. Don't you think that an IQ test is a method to identify whether a person has knowledge and rational or not? Thank you, they agree with me. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to state that IQ test is not a filter, but it's just a test to give an early impression. An early impression, I'm not going to say if they have low IQ, they can stop, don't join politics. So no, IQ test is just to show to the people whether they are good or not, early impression. So, ladies and gentlemen, everyone can have knowledge, everyone can read, everyone can memorize, everyone knows what is contained in the book. When a person has knowledge, another person has knowledge plus IQ, who do you choose? The person with a higher IQ. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to state that all politicians should sit for an IQ test prior to run for office. So, with that, I thank you.
The government will at least say how to get it.
Here.
Madam Chair, this House believes that politicians should not undergo an IQ test prior to running for public office. Before I get into any analysis, I'm gonna do a little bit of rebuttal. From the PM, the first thing, his first idea was the only reason people vote for them is that it's the people's voice. So we need to understand the role of a politician. The state shouldn't interfere in this. He specifically said that popularity, okay, is a problem. What was that? The bullshit something. Oh yeah, okay. So let me just put this out for you, okay? Our society is educated. We have neutral platforms to understand, okay, what is going on in our government, in our politics. So are you saying that our people are stupid and we listen to bullshit? That's not what I think. So going on to the second point, encouraging people to step forward to the office. No. You see, it disincentivizes people to join, to run for the office, because they might have the knowledge, they might have the passion, you know, they have love, empathy, they want to be involved, but they do not have the so-called IQ that we're talking about here. So it just, the country loses out that big pool of talent, and the key point here is the country loses. Now, third point, the better democratic process from this. Sit please. Okay, we know, and we all know that it is totally different. It is the total opposite. So he didn't talk about that too much, so I gave it the 3 seconds it deserved. Now, from the Deputy Prime Minister. Sorry, no, thank you. No, thank you. Now, he was saying about the people that the politicians have to take the accountability of the society in their own hands. Okay, now let me tell you, you don't have to be rational. You need to be rational. Okay, IQ tests don't guarantee rationality. Now, no, thank you. The second point was politicians that are not rational take bribes. He said a bunch of things, and that was the basic idea. Politicians that are not rational take bribes. Take bribes. An IQ test doesn't mean you wouldn't take a bribe. Listen to that. Bill Clinton, he wouldn't have failed an IQ test, but he has taken a bribe. Now, he went on for 3 years about the economic prospects. No, thank you. Politicians don't need an IQ test. They just need to have good knowledge. And knowledge and intelligence are totally different things. You don't have to be Einstein to run for government. No, thank you. Corruption, as he said, a bribe and everything, is a characteristic and attitude, and no IQ exam or test would solve that problem. All right. Now the member. Yes, you.
Sir, you have been talking that should not take it. So let me ask you, what is the harm of taking IQ test in the first place?
Okay, what does it solve? What does an IQ test solve? You're talking about how does it harm? We want to fix the problem, but it does not fix the main problem. So please, no, thank you, no, thank you. Okay, now he went on. Okay, now the rebuttal of the member of government. Oh my God. Okay, yes, member of government. Bullshit stories, blah blah blah, because politicians are lying, blah blah blah. Okay, so what does that have to do in an IQ test? Aren't we all smart people? If we took the IQ test, wouldn't we pass? But don't we lie? Don't we all lie? Okay, so and then I'm sorry, I forgot his name. But you went on to say that Barack Obama would win against the normal Tom, Dick, and Harry. No, thank you. But did Barack Obama take an IQ test? No. All right. IQ tests do not show rationality. Those are my points. No, thank you. Our viewpoint in this debate is good politicians should not necessarily be an intelligent one. Okay, the job of a no, thank you. You, yeah.
Sir, Barack Obama did sit for a test before he entered Harvard. So that why Harvard would like to take a person to set for IQ test? It's Harvard, sir.
Okay, so if that's an IQ test in a college, okay, wouldn't that mean that everyone else that went to a college would have taken a similar IQ test? You're just saying things, you know, on and on about the paper thing, exactly like he was doing. Okay, so no, thank you. The role of a politician has a severe differentiation from an engineer's job, who he goes on and cuts. You know, he has to fix a problem, but no, thank you. The role of a politician, as Sebastian said, he is the people's person. He understands the people, he supplies the people. And as far as we're concerned, a politician needs empathy, kindness, understanding, analyzing. He needs to be able to analyze. And that is not part of an IQ test. You can't put that in an IQ test. Now, as side opposition, we have already stated that this is not part of the IQ test. So, further elaboration, even if politicians are not smart and if they run for office, this doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be elected. You have to understand that. And it is for the voters to decide. And as my point stated just now, we have the mind, we have the capability, the rationality to think and to elect our own people. Status quo, politicians, status quo, unintelligent politicians aren't bad politicians. And the government is only trying to interfere in this process and is losing the big pool of candidates and talent that we have. I'm telling you this filter is wrong because under our characterization, a smart politician isn't a good politician. Thank you. Oh, fuck yeah.